There's only one man that comes close to the Glazers when it comes to the downfall and mismanagement of Manchester United. Someone that is nearly as responsible. Ed Woodward, the guy that brokered the deal for the Glazers to buy United, the guy that was overpaid to do a role he had no experience to do, the guy that said playing performance doesn't really have a meaningful impact on what we can do on the commercial side of the pitch while he was working at Manchester United. And that sums up how he operated. Everything was focused on marketing, finance, business. And this quote is really stupid because playing performance really does have an impact on commercial side of the pitch, because the better we are, the more competitions we're in, the more interactions there'll be, the more happy fans are, the more money we'll make on the commercial side. But Ed Woodward generally believed it doesn't matter how bad we are on the pitch, it's all about how much we can make commercially, and didn't think they interlinked, which, a basic business complex United couldn't do. And Ed Woodward's been doing interviews trying to clear his name, and it's absolutely embarrassing. We're going to get into what Ed Woodward's done, the interview quotes, other information on him, but do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new, and of course, let's get into it. So a story came out that was basically by ESPN that gave a bit of context. It said this: Ed Woodward reveals why Manchester United failed to sign Erling Haaland and Jude Bellingham. The thing is, you could add about another 10 names to this list of people that Ed Woodward failed to sign, but Jude Bellingham and Erling Haaland are the most notable. It was said that year, then United manager Ole Gunnar Solskjaer wanted Bellingham, Haaland, and also Declan Rice, but ended up with none of the trademark eared by the Norwegian. It was very obvious that Ole also wanted Grealish. Ole's transfer plan would have been Rice, Bellingham, Grealish, Haaland. Ended up with Donny Van De Beek, I think, Cavani, Amad Diallo. I didn't even get Sancho when he originally wanted Sancho. And it was said that Ole wanted to bring down the age of the squad. So he identified 3 young players and told the club he should prioritise signing them. And that was what ESPN had been told by one of Solskjaer's ex-teammates, someone that knowed Ole. It was Bellingham, it was Haaland, it was Rice, 3 young players that were identified. And this is the summary of Woodward. United failed to secure deals for Haaland and Bellingham and didn't pursue Rice. They didn't even pursue Declan Rice, who would have been like 40 million at the time. Instead, they signed Donny Van De Beek, even though it wasn't a target identified by Ole. So just to give you context into Ed Woodward and how he ran at United: Haaland, Bellingham, Rice. We could talk about Caicedo. We could talk about even Grealish, Sancho when he originally wanted Sancho, many other names. Never once mentioned Donny Van De Beek, and I was happy when we signed Donny Van De Beek, but Ole never wanted Donny Van De Beek, never once mentioned him, and the club signed Donny Van De Beek. And you know what else is interesting? And this isn't even in the report, but this was news that came out. Ed Woodward signed Ronaldo before he spoke to Ole about it. As soon as there's an opportunity to sign Ronaldo, Glazers and Woodward did it. They didn't even consult Ole. They didn't even ask Ole if he wanted him. Obviously, when they asked Ole, he wasn't going to turn down Ronaldo. It's Ronaldo. But Ole, even if Ole said no, he wasn't going to get a choice. Thomas Tuchel had an opportunity to sign Ronaldo on a Bowie, and Thomas Tuchel turned it down. Basically, Ole wouldn't have turned down Ronaldo because, he loves Ronaldo. He's got a great relationship with him. But he wouldn't have been given a choice. Now, what did Ed Woodward have to say on this in his ESPN interview? He said this: the guarantee of minutes Dortmund offered Bellingham would not be matched to what we could do, and the club simply felt that Haaland was destined for Manchester City, where his father, Alf Inge, had played himself. He was saying, it's not our fault, it's not my fault. Bellingham was going to get more minutes at Dortmund, and Haaland was destined for City. Haaland didn't even go to City till like 3 years later. So for me, I think that's Ed Woodward looking at silly excuses. Look, maybe Bellingham 100% understand why he'd gone to Dortmund. I think more sustainable as a young player, it's better for your career. I think also the fact that Man United just showed him the awful facilities at Carrington, which are probably a mess, and probably didn't sell the club right to Bellingham. I think it was best that Bellingham went to Dortmund. But Bellingham was someone that Ole wanted, and I don't know if he'd got the Donny Van De Beek treatment because Ole never wanted Donny. Haaland, I think we could have gone from him. The reason apparently United didn't get Haaland is because they didn't want to do like the wage demands and the age demands and pay the extra money, and that United thought Gala would be better value for money, is what had been reported. But in regards to Bellingham and what sort of could have gone wrong with Man United signing Bellingham, could also be down to this. I think Bellingham was more likely to pick Dortmund over United. Dortmund were also willing to pay more than United, and that was the same with Haaland. And I think one of the reasons Haaland and Bellingham went is because Dortmund were willing to pay the money. United never promised they were. But it was said that when Jude Bellingham visited Carrington in March 2020, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his assistants felt Sir Alex Ferguson would add a glamorous finish to their analytical presentation and detailed personal report on Bellingham. John Murtagh had a different view, however. Ferguson shook hands with Bellingham, but Murtagh guided the player and his parents out of the room for a tour of the facilities rather than having time to talk to Ferguson. Sir Alex Ferguson was reportedly incandescent at the perceived slight and said so to Murtagh's face at a later date. Man United had this plan with Sir Alex Ferguson to talk to Bellingham to convince him to join United. But John Murtagh thought, you know what, let's go and show Bellingham around the facilities we haven't updated or upgraded in 17 years. Now, United do have good facilities, but when they've not updated those facilities in 17 years, and you look at Real Madrid's facilities and Dortmund's facilities, and it kills me to say this, but Manchester City's facilities, and you think, you know what, we're going to convince this young talent Bellingham to pick Man United by giving him a tour of Carrington, when you could be letting him talk to iconic legends like Alex Ferguson, talking to him about how you see him as a player, how you'll develop him. And I do think, well, that sums up United, and that has got nothing really to do with Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward was here, but you have to look at that and think, what are we doing? I remember footage of Bellingham looking around United. I remember Man United was the only English club that had a real interest in Bellingham. United were favourites to sign Bellingham, and he went to Dortmund, which I'm almost glad he did for his career and his sake, because we probably would have ruined him. But I think that's one where maybe we could have got Bellingham. We don't know if we were ever going to get Bellingham. I think if we'd have pushed for Haaland, were willing to pay the money, I think he would have gone to United or Dortmund, because we needed a striker. We didn't have a striker then. I think he would have gone to United or Dortmund if we'd really pushed and played the money for Haaland. Bellingham's a difficult one. But when we actually look at the players and the names that United have missed out on in recent years, I do find this particularly interesting. Who did United recently miss out on? Bellingham, Grealish, Rice, Kane, Caicedo. All players that Ole wanted. Bellingham would have been 30 million, Grealish would have been 45 million, Rice would have been 40 million, Kane probably would have been about 80, 90 million, and Caicedo would have been £4 million at the time. Ralph Rangnick suggested Enzo Fernandez, Julian Alvarez, and Guardiola. All players. Enzo Fernandez would have been 12 million, Julian Alvarez would have been 15, 16, 17 million at the time. And I mean, look, these are players that Ten Hag wanted. Some of them were probably glad he didn't get. Kane, Kim and Jae were two players that Ten Hag really wanted this year. De Jong was one that he wanted last year. Gakpo and Felix was ones that he wanted in January. Todibo was his second option after Kim and Jae. And reportedly, the summer that we got Anthony, Ten Hag really wanted a striker and was a big fan of Darwin Núñez. And also, United were heavily linked to McAllister, but reportedly, we chose Mount over McAllister. And the fact that McAllister was 20 million cheaper and can play deeper than Mount and has been really good at Liverpool, you think, should we have maybe gone for McAllister over Mount with his 35 million release clause? Because there's a feeling that Liverpool just went and got McAllister because Mount chose United and United have chosen Mount over McAllister. Maybe we should have chose McAllister over Mount. That has nothing to do with Woodward, but they're Bellingham, Grealish, Rice, Kane, Caicedo, all players that United wanted. Even players like Bruno, Ole wanted in his first summer, didn't get until January. Ole wanted Sancho in his second summer, didn't get into his third summer. Ole didn't want Donny Van De Beek. Ole never asked for Pelistri, Amad Diallo, Cavani, Telles. But that's what Ole got. And we have to talk about Ed Woodward. Ed Woodward, and why for me, he is almost as bad as the Glazers. He's not as bad as the Glazers. He's left the club. But he brokered the deal for the Glazers to buy United. The Glazers wouldn't buy United if it wasn't for Ed Woodward. As a reward, he said, you know what? The Glazers said, you know what, Ed Woodward, you can stay here. We're going to offer you a highly paid job. He then went into David Gill's role after he left the club and almost failed at that he failed that for many years. He was at the club for over 10 years of failure. He got a massive payout to leave United and is now trying to do interviews, clearing his reps, saying, oh, we were never going to get Haaland, we're never going to get Bellingham, it was never my fault. We could have. If we were a proper run club, if Manchester United in 2020 had just come off the back of winning a league title or winning 2 or 3 league titles in a row, which is the trajectory we should have been on as a club of Manchester United, I'm sure Bellingham and Haaland would have loved to come to United. But the reason we haven't won a few league titles in the last few years is, again, the mismanagement. And I could even dive into the fact that Ed Woodward was the ringleader behind the Super League with the Glazers and Florentino Perez. Ed Woodward was a big factor to behind deciding to put United in the Super League. Why? For financial reasons. And obviously when the downfall happened, the Glazers thought the only way they can PR their way out of this is by putting the blame on Ed Woodward and sacking Ed Woodward. And that's what they did. And that's the only sympathy I have with Ed Woodward, is the Glazers hung him out to dry in the end. When there was so much pressure on the Glazers that they would almost have to leave United, they hung out him in the end. But Ed Woodward, it's glad he's left United. I don't think Richard Arnold is the best at his job, but he's a massive improvement on Ed Woodward. He knew he wasn't best known for footballing things. He got someone to help footballing things. He left when he knew it was his time to leave. But Ed Woodward came in. He brought in Donny. Ole never wanted Donny. He didn't get who Ole wanted. He neglected the footballing side of the pitch. Was the whole reason the Glazers brought the club, and just left with a big payout. Let me know your thoughts. Smash a like, smash a subscribe. Different kind of videos. See you next time. Bye.